Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to this flip through, walk through personal tour, bonding ritual with Anna Turian's Tarot of the Abyss. And I'm also going to be chatting briefly about the Oracle of Echoes second edition by the same artist, Anna Christina Turian. Oh my goodness. So I have been a big fan of Anna Turian's artwork ever since she released the Oracle of Echoes, the first edition, or at least ever since I found out about it. I absolutely love this Oracle deck. It's absolutely, I'm going to say absolutely a lot. It's really, really beautiful. But more than just being beautiful artwork, I feel like this Oracle deck has an awful lot of depth, and it's one that I feel like works really well to tackle tough situations. And the thing I've said about this deck over and over again over the time that I've had it has been, gosh, this deck is so gorgeous, and I feel like I would reach for it even more than I already do if it had just a few more cards. It just feels a little bit on the thin side. And I don't know what that is. I guess I'm spoiled by tarot, but I absolutely love the depth of the depth and the richness, I guess I want to say, in the artwork. And I find that it hits me right in the feels, and I love that it feels very balanced. And in fact, for a long time, this was my very favorite Oracle of all time. And a lot of that is because it's so balanced. And so when she released her second edition, I hopped on it right away, and it does have a new backing. So this is the backing of the first edition, and this is the backing of the second edition. They do appear to be the exact same kind of cardstock, but you can see that we do get some more cards, which is real exciting. The other major change, in addition to the extra cards, is that, oh, that's my title card, is that on the bottom here, where you normally see this little black bar with the keyword, instead, it's just in white or dark text right over top of the artwork. So it just feels even more borderless than it was before. But other than that and the extra cards, it's the same deck. It's absolutely the same deck, and I'm really, really excited. So let's just take a quick little flip through the cards. One of the things, like I said, that I've always really appreciated about this deck is just how balanced it is. You have light, you have shadow, you have difficulty. It feels very full of magic. This was one of the cards that I think the first time I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, it almost made me cry. Just beautiful. Anna's artwork brings out something really different, I think, in me when I look at it and when I work with it. This self-sabotage cards remains one of my favorites. I just think she did a really amazing job with this. I'm very excited. She is working on a deck called the Tarot of Echoes. I don't know when that one is due out, and I don't know if that's going to be an independent. This is independent, whereas the Tarot of the Abyss is mass market. I don't know if the Tarot of Echoes will be mass market or if she'll be producing it independently. I suppose I could have asked her. I didn't ask her. But I am, regardless, incredibly, incredibly excited for it. And as it is, I'm so over the moon that I have an Oracle deck that I can pair, or I guess now I have a Tarot deck I can pair with this Oracle deck that's by her as well. Tarot of the Abyss will be my first Anna Turian Tarot deck, although she has created others. She has a, I always forget the name of it. She has a tarot deck that's basically based on the same kind of idea as like a Rorschach, that's such a hard word to say, inkblot test. And I'm picturing the backs of the cards and the cards themselves in my mind, and I still can't think of the name. And this has happened to me before. But anyway, I digress. Just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful cards. And the funny thing is as I flip through, the new cards aren't jumping out at me in any particular way, which is good. It means that the artwork has blended beautifully together with what was already there. And it just already feels, I think this one's one of the new ones, Honesty. It just already feels, and this is new too, Silver Lining. It already feels very cohesive. So that is the new edition of the Oracle of Echoes. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this deck because I'm really here to dive into the Tarot of the Abyss, but I had to mention that I am really excited about this new second edition. And with these backings, I've already picked a Peggy bag to go with them. So these are going to just sit off to the side for now. I've also already picked a Peggy bag for Tarot of the Abyss. Check that out. Oh, so perfect. Anyways, you can live over there. this is what I'm really excited to dive into. So let's get into the cards. First of all, this is a US Games. Can I just say for a moment, I don't know what is going on with US Games at the moment, but it's been difficult to get a hold of their new releases. In Canada, I believe the same issue is happening internationally, like in the overseas, in the UK and that sort of thing. I don't know what's happening. I wish US Games would ship direct outside of the US, but they do not. So if you're having this trouble, I ended up doing a trade with a friend, and she ordered this for me, and I traded one of my decks to her. And that was my way around it. Normally what I would do and what I would suggest you do if you're having this difficulty and you're in an international location is talk to your local metaphysical stores. They can usually order these things in for you, and it may be a little bit of a wait, but you know it will come in, and it will come in at a reasonable price. So you don't have to jump through all kinds of hoops. You may be waiting a bit. But I had trouble. I had this on pre-order at Book Depository, and then they canceled my pre-order right after they said it was going to ship. I don't know what happened there. It's just been a bit of an issue. I'm assuming it's some kind of COVID-related production sort of thing. I don't know though. So if you're having that issue, talk to your local bookshop. Even like a local Barnes & Noble or something like that might be able to order it in. Anybody who can order wholesale US Games decks should be able to order in for you if you have a deck you're looking for. And it just may mean making a few calls or talking to some local shops. Anyways, enough babbling about all of that. Let's get into the cards. I'm not going to belabor the box. It is a really beautiful, sturdy two-piece box, and I love these. I love when they have the thumb cutouts. It may seem like a little thing, but I think it makes a difference in how a deck feels. You'll notice that this deck is not black and white, and you can really see the difference when you see the cooler colors of this Riverstone cloth I've got underneath me here, because it's really quite a cream color with black, which I think is really, really stunningly beautiful. Hopefully it doesn't clash too much with my cloth. I think it'll be fine, but that is why I was so excited to find this particular Peggy bag, because it is also a cream and black versus a, white. Anyways, very excited about that match, so gushing a little bit. But anyway, love the backing of this design. US Games always hides their copyright in the card art. Here they seem to have put it, I mean, it's tiny, but they seem to have hidden it in this part of the artwork here. Are we going to focus, camera? Hello? It's hidden in there. Which, I mean, I suppose if you're going to put it on the card, I wish they wouldn't put them on the backs, but I do understand there's lots of art theft happening in the art world, I guess, production world right now. But anyway, really excited to get into these. We'll talk about the guidebook at the end, because always excited about a little guidebook. Let's set the box aside. We're going to get zoomed in and take a little tour of these cards. Oh, cardstock real quick. Really beautiful, smooth, classic kind of cardstock. It's neither glossy nor fully matte, so it has a little bit of catching the light happen. This kind of cardstock shuffles really, really nicely. It will riffle and bridge beautifully, I'm quite sure. It's a little bit, it's about the same actually, as it's a little touch thicker or stiffer feeling than the Oracle of Echoes first edition cardstock, which is just, that's the deck that's sitting next to me, but it feels really lovely. It's not as stiff. Some of the US Games cardstock can feel a little stiff for some people. I don't mind their stiffer cardstock, but I actually honestly prefer this. It feels like it's the kind of deck that you could just work with for a long time. Okay, enough babbling about cardstock. Let's zoom in to the beautiful artwork. In case I haven't mentioned it lately, the walkthrough process is something I do for myself, as well as to share it with you guys. I love being able to share decks with you guys, but honestly, this is such a critical part of my bonding experience with the new deck, this first kind of journey through the cards where I really just slow down and look at the images and take it all in. So thank you for letting me do that with you, because it's nice to have a reason to do it. I think if I wasn't making YouTube videos, I would still do this process, but I'd have to figure out a different way to do it because it's become such an important part of what I do. But anyways, enough babbling. I keep saying that, but I'm going to babble more. We know what's going to happen. In any case, our fool here is a woman who has her face tilted to the sky, which is really beautiful. Her skirts and dresses are flowing around her, and she's stepping forward in this very open-hearted posture. The cliff below her here is just crumbling underneath her feet, so that's already happening. There's some birds in the sky around her. Her pack is, let's just bring this up to the camera a little bit. You almost can't see, like she's got the pole over her shoulder. You've got just the hint of her little satchel attached to the pole, and she's already dropped the rose from her fingertips. It's as if she's letting go of that purity as she steps forward, or letting go of that innocence in a way as she steps forward, which I think is really powerful. I love when we can see our magicians manipulating energy in some way, because I really see them as a very they're very, I want to say hands-on. It's more than that. I feel them very in touch with energy and moving energy around them in the world. They know how to access their deepest resources and make things happen in their lives. And I think that's really beautiful. I love here that instead of the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith as above, so below posture of the hands, where we have one hand to the sky and one hand pointing to the ground, instead we have the as above, so below represented by our magician being connected to this tree. The roots are connecting to the below, the branches are reaching into the above, and there's this swirling energy in front of the heart center that's being moved and manipulated by our focused magician here. And it just feels very tapped in and very magical and very kind of, it's a holistic way of looking at that hermetic idea of as above, so below, which I think is just really, really cool. And here, actually, in a very similar way, our high priestess is also working with energy in front of the heart center, only she has the yin yang symbol, a symbol of duality, of there's no such thing as dark without light or light without dark. This idea of harmony, of opposites. It's interesting because we normally would see this symbol represented in the temperance card, at least that's what's more common. But here, instead of the black and white pillars that sit behind her, she's holding that energy of duality, that energy of opposition in her hands, which I think is really incredible. And she has keys dangling from her waistline here, which is really cool. Behind her, there's a door open into what? The universe. We don't know, some secret place. And then there's this crescent moon at her forehead. All of our needed symbols are here. This already feels very magical, which I am super into. Oh, the Empress. I love her here. I love the bounty and creation and flowers flowing from her skirts and the way that she feels like she's part of nature, that she's in it. If you've ever stood on like the beach or in a wide open field on a breezy day and just felt the element of air move through you, that's what this makes me feel like. And also this idea that she's creation. There's the hint of a pregnant belly here, which is very common for an Empress card, but it's not the focus of the card in a way. It feels more like the focus of the card is her being part of nature. She seems very Gaia-like in this card, and I love that. Gaia being Mother Earth. Our Emperor. I really enjoy the positioning of his legs in this card. If you've ever been sitting down and somebody's caught your attention and you're just getting ready to stand up, there's a readiness to this posture, as if he's literally ready to leap up and do something. He feels more active and readied in that way, and we always know that our Emperor is ready to fight for what he believes in because he's usually wearing some kind of armor underneath his robes. This idea that he's got that readiness, and that readiness speaks to his power and also his sense of responsibility over what is in his domain. And I think that's really special. Behind him, we get a hint at the village or the town that he might be responsible for. He's holding his sphere of power. We have the Ankhs built into his chair here and the ram's horn, because of course the Emperor is associated with the sign of Aries. That ram symbology is built into his headpiece. And it's got a very sort of pagan-y kind of feel. I think that's really powerful and beautiful, but also unique. And I really enjoy that. I'm surprised I'm not, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this deck being monochromatic. As I've talked about a lot on the channel, monochromatic decks are not my favorite typically, but there's something about the flow and shading in Anna's artwork that I think makes it come a little more alive than just a straight black and white deck or like monochromatic deck. There's just a lot of shade, shade and light, I guess, in the deck. I am in awe of this version of a Hierophant card. Here we have the wise one, and we get this feeling of like a village elder, a wise person, an ancestor, somebody who, and we have our supplicants, but instead of sitting in front and kneeling in this gesture of sort of submission, instead we have this feeling of deep respect and honor. These two with their, like listening attentively, this one with her head bowed or his head bowed, this idea of taking in this deep wisdom and knowledge that came before. There's this feeling of sitting in a circle of elders or among one's elders and taking in that tradition and that idea. It feels way less dogmatic than a traditional Hierophant might look in a Rider-Waite-Smith clone deck, for example, but it doesn't feel inaccessible, but it also feels reverent, and it does speak to that idea of tradition and authority, which I really appreciate. The Lovers. I almost feel like I love this with the two trees intertwined. There's a lot to see here, and intuitively when we think about the fact that these two are now dependent on one another, their root systems are intertwined. So where they draw nourishment from is the same source. They can't easily disentangle at this point. And I think that speaks to the long-term commitment of the choice we make in the Lover's card. The Lover's card, whether we're speaking to it from a position of relationship or from a position of choice and commitment, it really speaks to that idea that this is not a frivolous decision, right? This is something that's going to impact our life for a long time to come, possibly for the rest of it. And so there's this weight to it that I think these entangled trees really capture. The Chariot card. I adore this. This feeling of like, they look like they remind me of Canadian geese. And of course it's in this monochrome, so I don't really know, but they remind me of Canadian geese flying in formation, except for here our charioteer has one foot on either of these beautiful birds and is sort of being carried by them, but is clearly managing their flight pattern in a way to stay focused on that destination. I like that we get the hint of the sun rays coming here, and it gives me almost a teeny titch of an Icarus vibe. That idea of maybe flying too close to the sun, maybe a bit of warning here hidden in the chariot. I don't know why that comes to me, but it does. I do really enjoy the image and all of the swirling hair and such. Again, it gives a real feeling of movement and I don't know, energy to this card. Oh man, the strength card. You know what I love the most, I think, about this is that these two figures who are looking at us dead in the face, this idea of inner power and courage and strength, neither seems, again, cowed or beaten in this image. Sometimes in the strength card, we'll see one person having clearly like defeated the lion, which to me is not the point. The point to me of the strength card is to really embrace our either ours or whatever situation we're dealing with. But a lot of times the strength card for me represents those pieces of ourselves we feel like we need to tame or befriend, maybe things from our shadow or things that we have a harder time with wrangling within ourselves, right? And so that idea of submission doesn't quite do it for me. I always look for some sort of peaceful exchange in a way between the person or the figure who is taming the lion and then the tamed lion themselves. What it strikes me about this is how powerful they both look. Like, yes, we are in harmony with one another, but we have not given up our power. The lion is still just as strong as it was before, and that shows in the face and the demeanor. And same thing here with our central figure. She looks fierce and strong. Neither is cowed or submissive, but it's like as if they've met each other toe to toe, and they're like, I respect you and I honor you and you are a part of me, or however you want to see the situation in the strength card. But I really love that. I think it's really, really, really well done. I saw this card some time ago when Anna was sharing artwork from this work in progress of this deck. And I think this was the card that made me realize I knew I was going to buy this deck, whether it was monochromatic or not. I mean, a part of me definitely hoped that she would put it in color because I love her work with color. But I also think this is, again, really, really powerful exactly as it is. I love that our hermit is a crone. We see somebody in this later stage in life with deep wisdom of her own, and also that she's holding this snake, because snakes, of course, as a symbol of wisdom and transformation here, are really powerful. It's something more and it's something different, and it's a step to the left of the traditional hermit and lantern, and I think it's really a neat choice. The Wheel of Fortune. This is really interesting to me. So we have an eye right at the center of this sort of swirling vortex of what's happening here, this wheel. Her hand is open, and it's as if she's feeding energy into or engaging with this wheel, with this fate. It feels as though there's again, it feels very powerful. Sometimes in the Wheel of Fortune card, I feel like the emphasis can be on what is happening to us rather than how we're engaging with what's happening to us. And so I feel like there's an engaging here. There's an exchange happening between the wheel and this figure, as if they have, they're having a conversation in a way. There's an energetic conversation or a give and take happening that gives a little bit more empowerment to the card, which I really like. No complaints so far. This is such a cool justice card. It brings us really close with the fact that justice, when it comes to consequence, with the weighing of the scales, that is something that can weigh on us as individuals. If we take an action, we have to deal with the consequence of that action. Being up close and personal with the face here, I think, is really a poignant reminder of that. And if you look very closely in the center of the eye, we have our scales. And I mean, how powerful is that? At the end of the day, however you want to look at this card or engage with this card, the idea that there is a need to look things in the face and not look away from them, I think that's a powerful facet to this card. There's a lot that I think you could dig into. I'm really excited to get into Anna's interpretations of her artwork as well. Oh, okay, I love this. I love this so much. So this is the Hanged One, only we're the one that's the Hanged One in the perspective of this card, which is really unique. So we have our crows here, and at first I was like, oh, the crows are upside down. But actually, if you flip the card upside down, you notice this is the landscape and the tree and the house and the sky and our birds here. So it's us that's hanging upside down, and it brings home the fact that we are the ones in suspension. We are the ones who are pausing. We are the ones who are getting this different perspective. And it really brings that idea home in this really beautiful show, not tell kind of way, which I think is awesome. the death card. This is incredible. So we have, there's so many nuances to this. And I think actually the more that I look at this, the more I'm like, if this were in color, I feel like I'd miss some of it. I feel like some of the details that blend together in an intentional, it must be intentional kind of way, they wouldn't necessarily jump out at me if there was lots of color and busyness happening in this artwork. So in a way, it's bringing me right to the heart of the message. But we again have this sort of crone-like figure here in the center as part of this tree. And trees to me are such beautiful representations of sort of what's above and below and in the middle, this idea of sort of the three realms, right? And what's interesting is that when you look into the roots of the tree, there is the outline, come on, there we go, of a skull right here. How cool is that? But what I love especially is that she seems to be holding a hand out, like sort of beckoning you, like, okay, it's time. Are you going to come with me or not? Kind of thing. Like, are you going to engage with this or are you going to fight it? There's an invitation feeling to this card, which is not something we normally see in the death card, but that I really appreciate. Okay. Thank goodness there are titles on this card, because at first glance, this could make me think Two of Cups for sure, because there are, of course, two cups happening here. But it's interesting because we do get a feeling it's very clearly fire in this cup and water in this cup. If you look at the pattern of what's happening in the cups, this is clearly flame and that's clearly water. This is one card where I almost feel like a little bit of color here. I know I'm totally contradicting myself, but I love how the roots, they're rooted in, but they're balancing one another out. And out of this balance comes this person. And so we get the idea that these two dueling energies, or these two opposing energies, are finding balance within the self. So it's about finding that moderation and balance within ourselves. The Devil. It looks like, oh, okay, sorry. I just was like, wait, it looks like he's standing on an egg. And then I realized he is standing on an egg, and oh wait, he's got wings. It's as if he was born, and rather than actually fully blossoming into who he was and who he's meant to be, instead he clung to that shell, or he clung to the known, or he clung to what made him feel safe and secure, and through doing that has bound himself to it in a way where he can't go off and do his own thing. He can't find that freedom. There's a lot to be said here about sort of the generational things that come in, and how we let the ways that we've experienced our upbringing, or the ways that we've come through life so far, influence our sense of freedom and what we're capable of. It's almost as though we've been trapped by not only the conditioning that we were raised within, but we've stayed trapped in that rather than break free. Even though our wings are full and we could easily get out of this situation, we choose to stay in bondage because it's more comfortable, right? Than actually growing and evolving. That's what I get from this. I don't know. I'm off in La La Land. I hope this is going to be a long one, I can tell, because I'm only on the tower and we're 22 minutes in, but this is really great because the house was obviously built on a tree that has continued to grow out over this cliff, putting the person who lives there in this home in a more and more precarious position until, of course, lightning strikes and everything's coming tumbling down and there's nowhere for them to fall but into the abyss, right? Oh, it's Terror of the Abyss. That was unintentional, but it's kind of funny. So a lot of times when I look at a tower card, what I'm looking for is what was wrong with the tower that it needed to come tumbling down in the first place. Because often there's something that needs to come crashing down. In this case, the house was not in a safe or secure location anymore. It was time to rebuild something on more solid ground. So it was built on something shaky. There's something not quite, it wasn't the right place, right? It wasn't the right tower. Really interesting. It also speaks to the ways that the tower can shake us to our core. It's like our sense of security and what we know in our life is being screwed with, and that's tough. The Star card. It almost looks as though, so I'm looking at the card and I'm not paying attention to what it looks like in the viewfinder, but it almost looks like this could be flame here, or maybe it's tall grass. What catches my attention most is this physical posture of this person. We're almost like looking up at her from slightly below where she stands, and she's reaching for that bright light in the sky. Like she's reaching for hope. She is actively engaging. She wants to recalibrate. She wants to recalibrate with hope. But she's an active participant. She's not just passively glancing up at the star going, okay, cool, there's some hope there. Like she's like, no, I'm going to reach for it. I'm going to be an active part of that process. The Moon. Oh, I really want to read Anna's interpretation of this. So a few things jump out at me. We still have the sense of a pathway between. So there's nods to that. We have the moon up here. Interesting how the two characters are kind of wrapped up in the moon. But here, I can't tell if both figures, it almost looks like this is the figure perhaps representing more of the wild. They seem less clothed maybe than this one. I'm curious. I want to learn more. I really want to cheat. Let's cheat. Whatever. It's my video. I can cheat if I want to. I want to read what she says about the moon. Okay. Let's just see. Near the edges of two cliffs, two figures stand, wrapped in rays of luminescent moonlight. The male stands upon the right cliff, while his female counterpart stands upon the left cliff. They represent the primordial active and passive energies, spirit and matter, light and dark. There's only a small gap between them, making it easy for them to cross and unite, yet one false step could be their undoing. The moon governs the tides. Its ever-changing phases exert a constantly shifting influence upon the waters of the earth as well as upon our emotional lives. Boy, that's the truth. Each one of us is connected to the moon through occult energies that shift our emotional bodies. In contrast to the sun, which shines constantly and reliably, completely illuminating the world, the moon provides only intermittent and indirect light. The moon provides general impressions but cannot be relied upon to reveal the whole truth. There's something mystical to its permanence, its stillness and silence. For this reason, it is important to proceed with caution. When the moon card appears in your reading, it signals a period of fluctuation and change. For most of us, the inability to clearly distinguish our surroundings instills a sense of fear and anxiety, reminiscent of childhood fears of the dark. Moonlight dances lightly at nighttime. It hints but doesn't reveal all, and what we see by moonlight can turn out to be quite different in daylight. Therefore, it is not at all difficult to misperceive objects or intentions. Beware then of false impressions throughout this period, as it's quite easy to lose your step and be deceived. It's also wise not to make any major decisions or changes during this time. So interestingly, I guess the thing that really jumps out at me the most is the way that they are entangled with the moon. And it's true that my experience, at least with full moon energy, is a really great example. I definitely feel different in my emotional body than I feel the rest of the month. And I feel like that's a very common human experience, and perhaps a reminder that when we're seeing this card in a reading, this could be a gentle reminder that, like, hey, we may be not in our most clearest frame of mind, and maybe we need to get clear before we act. Really interesting. The sun. This is so pretty. It feels like the sun and a garden are the same. It's like they're layered over top of one another. We have almost a garden here in the center of the sun, and then all of this life reaching up. We have the lemniscate up here in the vines, and this one flower just sort of reaching up for it. There's a feeling of exuberance and growth. For sure, there's a sense of clarity here in the center where we can see the path ahead of us is clear, especially as opposed to the moon where things are very dark and shadowy. We get this feeling of illumination and clarity. Awakening. I love this. I love this so much. We have the shadow of the old self here, perhaps even the death of the old self as the new self emerges or rises from this physical plane into something higher, something more evolved. This idea that we are, again, evolution is a great word for judgment, of course, but awakening is also a beautiful word. This idea that we're coming into who we truly are, we're more in alignment with our highest self, or we're being invited to do that, to step into that. And then we have the world. This is so great. This is so great because, of course, we have this gorgeous lemniscate made up of I want to say, Ouroboros kind of situation where it's with the snake eating its own tail, the idea of cycle and permanence. Then we also have the eye of somebody who's been through some things, right, and has had some experiences, but also the sense of something new, and there's potential. Something is beginning as well. Love that. Well, it's clear this is a deep dive, so I'm just going to roll with it. Here we have our Ace of Swords. And we have a tree up here, and in the tree, oh, this is interesting. It's like it's a representation of the mind. So there's all of these things. So looks like there's the shadow of two people maybe fighting here. There's a house here. There's a figure looking over that direction and reaching for a bird here. And our figure in the foreground, it's like these are all the branching thoughts and ideas, a lot of almost like chaos. And then in it all, she's holding this sword. And the sword has the tiny little lemniscate at the base of the blade here, right there. And this idea that the sword can cut through all of that stuff and help us get clarity. Oh my gosh. Anna, what have you done? This is incredible. I love this. This Two of Swords. Look at this blank face and this choice of which mask we're going to wear or which self we're going to step into. Who are we going to honor with what we do next? It's just a reminder that we're playing an active role in how we choose to engage with the world. The Three of Swords. Now, it's interesting. I have a sort of melded version of the Three of Swords in my own personal practice. There's some debate about the Three of Swords because, of course, in the Rider-Waite-Smith system, it often speaks to heartbreak, which I think is kind of what we see here. And then numerologically, this card really speaks to growth and to learning because, of course, threes numerologically are often about growth and expansion. And then, of course, the swords are the realm of the mind. So there's opportunities to learn and grow. But the way that I've always interpreted this card is to meld those two meanings. So for me, I look for a card that shows that, yes, something may have been learned the hard way. There's a freedom in having experienced failure or loss or difficulty, in that we can learn from those experiences. So yeah, it might not feel great. It might have been, unpleasant, but we've learned something. We've just learned it the hard way. And there's a freedom to this, right? That yes, there's the hole here indicating that there was a loss or some hurt, but there's also freedom. This bird is free now to fly. So there's still expansion and growth possible. Oh, I think I remember about this. So there's two different Three of Swords cards. So Anna did this so that you could work with either, except I still think I would work with, I really honestly think I would still work with this one. But this is the more numerological representation, right? We see somebody in a book with study. There's this idea of mental expansion and intellectual growth in here. But I still like the idea that it's maybe been learned the hard way, or is being learned the hard way. So I think I'm going to keep this card in my deck. Four of Swords. It's almost like there's a bunch of people and they're sparring or fighting or having some kind of practice in a yard with their sword play here. And they've set all their swords down and we've put our helmet down and we're just taking a breather, right? We're safe for the moment. We can lay everything down and take a rest. And that definitely speaks to the Four of Swords. The Five of Swords. So here is a really interesting thing, right? Our character in the card has captured what looks like a butterfly in a jar. And so there's this win, like, yeah, you've captured this beautiful thing, but like, now what? Like what about the experience of the butterfly in the jar? Really cool way to illustrate the concept of the Five of Swords and this idea of sort of maybe winning or overpowering something or being overpowered, but maybe it hasn't been done in the most altruistic of ways. Six of Swords. This is so beautiful. We have our figure here on the back of a beautiful bird lifting up above these rough waters. I like that the swords are being left behind. That is something I always look for in a Six of Swords, is where are the swords? Are the swords the baggage, the experiences being brought with us, or are they being left behind? And it can give a very different feel and interpretation to the card. Seven of Swords. We don't really know what's happening here. It does look a little sneaky sneak, doesn't it? I do like a little sneaky sneak in my Seven of Swords. Our Eight of Swords. This is really cool. So she's surrounded by swords, but we're looking at this card from like up above, right? We get this feeling of like looking down on the card. And because we're looking down on it, it's like these swords are actually laying like flat, right? So it's an illusion. It's like, yeah, you're surrounded by swords, but you can literally walk right over them. This ribbon that's wrapped around her is loose and already unraveling all on its own. She just has to finish unraveling herself and step over the swords. Like everything's fine. Oh, so much pokey, anxiety, icky, sleepless, restless sort of fear in the Nine of Swords, which is exactly what I'm looking for in this card because that is what it typically represents. The Ten of Swords. This is super interesting because we have somebody here on the ground who's been stabbed a bunch of times by swords. But it's interesting to have another character because you normally only see one character in this card. So it gives you another sort of side of the story, I guess, to consider what might have happened that led it there. This Ten of Swords is really great. Gosh. Man, again, we have a sort of numerological alternative because tens are the culmination. They are the culmination of their suits. There's this, when it comes to the realm of the mind, right? This could be a feeling of overwhelm, of mental exhaustion, or could be drama. It's like that over the top kind of feeling. I think this is the more beautiful card, but I kind of feel like I read the card more in this area of sort of drama or letting things kind of take over mentally. And this does feel like it shows that a little bit better. Here we have the sort of learned wisdom. I think that's really powerful, but I think this is more in line with how I read. So I'm going to set that aside. I wonder how many more extra cards there are. So here we have the Page of Swords. I love her. She's holding the sword. She's looking up at the light. She has a book open. There's definitely curiosity and learning and exploration, mental exploration happening. Our Knight of Swords. So we've got female page and female knight. I love this. I love the light and how she's engaging with the light. Like here she's just looking at the light. Here she's holding the light and she's like fighting it, almost like she's engaging with it. Here the light is at the base of the sword. So the sword isn't being used here in the Queen of Swords. Rather it's like having the knowledge but not necessarily feeling you have to do anything about it right away. It's like wielding it more mindfully. And here the King of Swords, that light is at the top of the head, at the crown of the head. He's got plans. He's going to know when the right time is to act. Love that. Oh, and there's a maze behind him. Oh, so cool. Okay, so now we're into our wands. We have the Ace of Wands, and it's almost as though she's literally holding a phoenix that has just birthed. So there's a lot of potency and power and possibility in this card for sure. Yes, shading his eyes and looking out over the distance. So great for the Two of Wands. And then another 3. A lot of times people, I've heard the term for the 3 of Wands, you know, our ship has come in. So there's this idea of looking for the ship. The way I read the 3 of Wands is as if we're embarking. Like in the 2 of Wands, let me back up. In the Ace of Wands, I see this as sort of the seed. Things are just sparking. There's an idea or a possibility. In the 2, though, that's when we're starting to explore what that could look like. Where could we maybe go with that idea? Where could we take it? But in the 3, we know kind of where we're going. And now we're taking those first tentative steps in that direction, right? And then in the 4, we pause because we've been on the journey now for a little bit and we recognize we have a milestone. And this is a great milestone image for me. Milestone's one of my favorite keywords for the 4 of Wands. You guys will obviously have been learning more about some of my keyword things in my course that I've been doing here on YouTube. But regardless, the 4 of Wands here, blowing out the candles on the birthday cake. I like that there's a lot of candles. We get the idea this is somebody a little bit older. They've got some life under their belt. Love that. The 5 of Wands, it's like 2 birds are fighting over the nesting material. Could even be the same pair. Like, no, I've got the best stick. No, I do. But maybe they could just work together and finish building the dang nest already. Love it. The 6 of Wands, the dancer taking a bow. Of course, the 6 of Wands is often about that external recognition or either craving for it or recognition of it. Really enjoy that. 7 of Wands. This is great. We have the perspective from being down below this figure who's got the higher ground and who is fighting against all of these attackers. The 8 of Wands is where we have a lot of momentum. Here it's interesting because we see these geese in flight in formation moving towards their goal, their destination. But the wands are actually down here on the ground. And then in our 9 of Wands, our figure really tired but still holding his post, right? Still protecting, still guarding. And our 10 of Wands, big bundle of sticks. So here we have our page. Looks like she's trying to build a fire maybe. So she's gathering sticks and gathering the resources she needs to build a fire. Yep. Here in the Knight of Wands, we're sort of questing almost for a fire spirit. It's like our knight has gone on a quest to find that element of fire so that he can bring it back to build a fire out of. I don't know. Am I making this up? Am I just like off? No, I'm not making this up. So now in the Queen of Wands, we have the fire and we're starting to nurture it into or grow a flame, sort of bring it into. I'm really liking the way that this is done. And then the King of Wands with this full blaze, fully in control of the element. Yep, I'm really liking how the quartz are done. Okay, this Ace of Cups is freaking gorgeous. I love this so much. So our cup is full and it's sort of wrapping around her. And that's the feeling of the Ace of Cups. It's like a blessing. It's something bountiful emotionally. I love that. I love that it forms the shape of the crescent moon. And actually, when I look a little closer, it almost looks like the wave is forming a pattern that could be interpreted almost like a mirror in front of her. That idea of self-fulfillment. At least that's what I'm getting from it. I can't stop touching these cards. I'm sorry if that's distracting. The 2 of Cups, they're intertwined. And if we go back to the Lovers for a second, this idea, we get a similar feeling, right? Only in the Lovers, this has been entangled for some time, right? There's history and time, a long-term commitment happening here, right? But in the 2 of Cups, they're just beginning to intertwine, right? They're meeting each other on equal footing or equal ground. I guess not footing because they're mermaids, but you get the idea. They're coming to each other as equals and they're beginning to intertwine themselves with one another. So there's an entanglement happening. Of course, we also have this sign of the lemniscate, which is, I think, really, really cool. Okay, this is great because we have a first-person perspective of the 3 of Cups. So we have sort of as if we're the one toasting here, and we have 2 different ages represented here, which I really enjoy. The 4 of Cups. I love that these cups are literally kind of out of sight, but also like very embedded in this tree as if they've been there for a long time. And like, how clueless are you? Like, you've got these, you know they're good, you know they're solid, you know they're stable. And here's this other one up here above you is like spilling over. It's so full and you're still not noticing it. 5 of Cups. You really get the emotion in this card. The 3 spilled cups, the 2 remain. And we have a couple of runes on here. So we have Dagas, the idea of a new day or a new dawn. And I think that is either, I think that's I was. It's almost like Okay, this has happened. You're safe. The two full cups bear the runes of Daga, symbol of hope and achievement, and Iwa, symbol of rebirth and endurance. I had the right idea. Love that. The Six of Cups, here he's very clearly reminiscing of a simpler time. Seven of Cups, literal head in the clouds. I adore this. The other card I think I've had, this reminds me a little bit of the Osho Zen Tarot, Seven of Water, which has the same kind of idea, castle in the clouds in the sky. And I've always loved that interpretation. Her feet are not on the ground. Like, she needs to come back down to earth and, like, get real, right? In our Eight of Cups, I think this is so powerful because the Eight of Cups, of course, is a card about recognizing that you've got 8 cups invested into something, right? You've got a lot of emotional investment into whatever it is, but you've recognized that no matter how much you've emotionally invested, that doesn't mean it's yours and that it's yours forever, and that maybe it is time to make a change. And here she's very consciously taking that cup that she's invested in and she's pouring the contents out as she walks away. And in that way, she's very clearly taking her power back in this situation, which is just, it's an incredible representation of the card. The Nine of Cups. Oh, they all have each different flowers in them. I'm so glad it's not a dude with a bunch of wine. Thank you, Anna. I know you didn't do that just for me, but I really, really genuinely appreciate that this is how it's depicted. I think it's really lovely. I also think, again, one thing I'm really appreciating throughout this deck is we've definitely seen a wide range of ages, and I love that because here we have somebody who looks like she's probably in her 30s or 40s or, maybe even her 50s. She's lived some life and she's reached this place of emotional fulfillment and she's literally stopping to smell the roses of her life, right? Which is really what the Nine of Cups is all about. And the Ten of Cups, this idea of connection and the family bond and the security, and they're on their road to their home. Like, it's really beautiful. So I can be real picky about the Page of Cups. Now here we have the page is engaging with a boat. They're on a boat in a storm, it looks like. And our page is doing some work on the boat. What is he doing? Is he netting something? Ah, yes. Okay, so it's as though he's getting out. They're manning the ship, right? So the Page of Cups, then we have the Knight of Cups kind of wrangling the sails. The Queen of Cups is sort of just there, like riding in comfortable, like in comfort, so to speak. She's engaging with the element, but she's doing it from a place of comfort and confidence. And then, of course, our King of Cups is able to be right there on the edge without fear, right? He knows he's got things under control. It's really interesting. I really want to read her write-ups on the quartz, too. Here we have our Ace of Pentacles. And I love that we have the apple cut in half to show, because when you cut an apple in half this way, like so not down, like aligned with the core, but across the core, it does make a natural 5-pointed star, pentacle, which is a beautiful representation of the pentacle. And I think just really cool, the idea of the seed being present and how it grows all these apples. So there's this idea of potential for sure in this card. In the Two of Pentacles, and I love this, so often in the Two of Pentacles, we're dealing with things like work-life balance, and we're dealing with like juggling responsibilities and that sort of thing. And here we have somebody who's pretty much split themselves. So one part of themselves is focused over here, and one part of themselves is focused over here. So neither's really getting their full attention, and at some point they may have to decide which self to step into and which ball to consciously put down or let drop. The Three of Pentacles, all 3 hands pulling on the rope, like that is powerful, each with a pentacle sort of tattoo. I love that. Okay, I like this. The Four of Pentacles. I like the out of skew different sizes of the coins that our main character is holding on to. It's like he's holding because he feels like he only has 4, but he's totally lost track of the fact that you might only have 4 things. But if 2 of those things are normal size, and then one of those things is pretty big, and then one of those things is huge, you've got a lot more than you think you have. And so this kind of reminder that maybe you're clinging too tightly, but you don't need to. Maybe you have more than you realize. And also just the unwieldiness of being so controlling with your resources. In the Five of Pentacles, consoling one another out here while there's this door open. And not only is the door open with clearly places for them to go, rooms that are available, so to speak, in like an inn or something, but there's somebody there kind of calling them and beckoning them, inviting them in. They don't have to be out here. They can get help. And then in the 6, the idea of reciprocity or reciprocation or giving or receiving, asking for help and or giving it. When you've been through a rough time, you then recognize sometimes where you can give back or vice versa, right? You might need the help sometimes and you've maybe given in your past. Seven of Pentacles. I like the bread baking as a sign of sort of perfecting the work and doing the work again and again and just being really good at it. Here she has a beautiful brick oven and she's making fresh hot loaves of bread. Love that. Our Eight of Pentacles. I said that, you know what, that's the 7. I just realized. I was talking as if it was the 8, but you know what? Let's go back for a second. So in the 8, he's bricklaying, it looks like, as his mastery. So we'll get there in a second. But back to bread for a second. Let me reel it back in. Let's get away from the 8 of Pentacles, which is how I was interpreting it. Let's look at it as a 7 of Pentacles. Now in the 7 of Pentacles, we don't really know how things are going to fully turn out, right? We've been putting in all of this work, but we don't know until we know how it's going to turn out. And bread is actually like that because, of course, you can do everything the way you always do it, but if the humidity in the air is different, if anything has changed about the conditions, your bread still may fall. Like it might not rise properly, or it might be too chewy, or it might not be fluffy enough. You know what I mean? So bread is one of those things that while it can be very precise, it can also be very sensitive to the environment and to other things that are going on. So there's this idea of like, you may have done everything you think you should be doing, but you won't know how the bread turns out until it's out of the oven. So that still works. I just had to shift gears and like reinterpret based on what card it was. So yeah, bricklaying for the 8 of Pentacles also works really well. Doing a lot of the same thing over and over again and mastering your craft. And the 9 of Pentacles, the enjoyment of one's hard work, right? And here we have a woman in a garden with a little bird friend. I love this idea of generations. Look at this hand and how weathered and worn it is and how much life it's seen. Sort of holding hands with a slightly younger life with more ahead of them. It's really beautiful. Because we do look in the 10 of Pentacles for that sense of generations, right? And we see it here. Legacy. What are we leaving behind? What is our legacy? Here we have the Page of Pentacles who appears to be planting something. Is he holding a key? It looks like he's holding a key. That's interesting. Love that he's touching the ground. Oh, wait. So he's holding a key. There's a horse and a rider in the distance, and he's touching the earth. It's almost like he's preparing to go on a journey. Maybe, I don't know. I'd be curious about your guys' thoughts. Let me know in the comments down below. What do you think is happening with the page here and this key over here and touching the earth? What do you see in that image? The Knight of Pentacles walking beside the horse, taking his time. Our Queen of Pentacles. The key is in the door. Interesting. Okay, sorry. I just am really curious about all this. Oh, okay, wait. So he's dug up the key. The Page of Pentacles has dug up the key, I think. Our Knight of Pentacles has the key around his neck and he's taking it someplace. He's taking it on a journey. He's being responsible for it. Then our Queen of Pentacles has obviously gotten this key and she's put it into this lock and she's able to pull out this plant. And then our King of Pentacles is showing the pentacle that was dug up here. He's wearing it at his heart. And he's holding literally the world. It looks like he's holding like a couple of mountains with some birds flying around. Do you see that? I'm really excited about the quartz. I think they're really special and unique, and I'm stoked to see what the guidebook might have to say about them. That was quite a deep dive, but thank you for coming along with me for the journey. As I expected, this deck shuffles really, really lovely. No gilding to worry about. I don't think I would edge this deck. I think it's perfect exactly as it is. I don't think, you know, I'm stunned how I didn't notice the lack of color nearly as much as I thought I would in this deck. I was not expecting that. I am a big sucker for color. I've talked about it before. Oh, but man, this is just, it's beautiful. I'm going to shuffle some more because I just want to. And then we're going to pull a sample card and read another description from the guidebook. Actually, you know what? Let's do a energy obstacle advice. I've already read just one sample page, so let's do a sample reading with this deck. So I'm going to do an energy obstacle advice tarot by the book style. So I'm going to read 3 cards intuitively. Energy obstacle advice, we'll say for the week ahead, whenever you happen to be watching this, if this message is meant for you. If it's not, that's okay. It's just a sample reading. But we're just going to do energy obstacle advice, and I'll interpret it, and then we'll take a look at what Anna says. All right. Because, I mean, we're already in for a diamond for $1, right? Energy. The Sun. Oh, I'm excited to see what her guidebook says about that. Obstacle is the 9 of Cups. And our advice is the 8 of Cups. Maybe not the best shuffle ever, but that's okay. We're going to work with it. So let's get zoomed in a little bit. So these are our 3 cards. So if I was reading this in a week ahead spread, energy obstacle advice, our energy, the sun, things are clear and illuminated, our path ahead, we're aware of how we should be moving forward. We kind of know what we're supposed to be doing. We just need to remember to be fully engaged with who we really are, like not to get pulled off track by maybe what everybody else thinks. The sun for me is about clarity, but it's also about authenticity and really being in the fullness of who you are. So our energy for the week ahead is really about embodying that, right? Being in our authentic selves and being unafraid to kind of bear all in a way. It's not so much about bearing and vulnerability, even though I just said that. It's more about stepping into the fullness of self. And then in the obstacle position, we have the 9 of Cups. And how could such a beautiful energy be an obstacle? The 9 of Cups can point to where we're maybe not seeing how much we already have. We maybe are lacking in that sense of emotional fulfillment and gratitude. Maybe there's been enough going on in our lives that we forget to take stock of the things that are really beautiful and powerful and good. And so we lose track of that. And so we're kind of getting in our own way. As much as we're in this really beautiful, positive place, we're not always recognizing the positivity around us. Maybe we're too focused on the things that aren't going right. And our advice card is the 8 of Cups. Really recognize what it is that we've put our emotional energy into that is no longer fulfilling us, or fulfilling our needs. And it's actually, in a way, taking away from our sense of gratitude of what is good. What can we or should we walk away from? What are we clinging onto even though we don't need it anymore, even though it's not serving us anymore? So let's take a quick look at Anna's guidebook and sort of line that up with what she has to say. And I may not read the whole entry. I'm just going to kind of scan for some key things here because I know we've been here for a bit. So Anna about the sun says, the sun rises faithfully in the east, its rays swirling and dancing with vitality. It is an energetic life force that activates all it touches. It awakens flora and fauna alike. If the sun card appears in your spread, life will soon be advised with vital energy and new hope. There is a whole world out there that's yet to be discovered. And we see that, of course, in the center of the sun here. It has always been there. We just needed to develop the eyes to see it. Of course, it's a very positive card, and she goes on from there talking about sometimes we just need a shift in perspective and perception, and then what was once hidden shall soon be revealed. So very positive. Definitely a different take on it that I took it, but that's beautiful, and I love it. The 9 of Cups as our obstacle. Now, she doesn't have reversed meanings in here, so we'll still have to kind of intuit what the shadow of this card might be. The art on the card shows a woman bending her head down to smell the flowers that bloom from 9 cups. She seems happy. There's a faint smile on her lips, and she bears a sense of calm and contentment. I wanted to capture a moment that shows the sheer joy a person can experience from the simple things in life. And to me, that's the key right there. If we're seeing this energy as an obstacle, how are we not noticing the joy in the simple, everyday things in life? Are we maybe so focused on something bigger that's taking our attention that we're not catching those small moments of joy and thus getting in our own way? And then finally, let's take a look at what Anna has to say about the 8 of Cups. She's had enough. Yes, indeed. The woman pictured in the card is tossing her cup and leaving it all behind. She's moving on, leaving behind a rundown cabin and all of her belongings with it. There is no sadness in her eyes, only determination and courage. A sense of freedom grows inside her with every step she takes. This is the card of moving on from a situation or place that is no longer bringing you joy. It goes on from there, but she says it takes a long time for us to admit when something is not working for us. Perhaps we've outgrown a career or a relationship. Change is never easy and the unknown is scary. However, you know very well that this change is inevitable and it's coming. That's a little bit ominous, but I think in this case, it's also about recognize what you can let go of that's no longer, I'm going to stick with my original reading, right? Like, I think sometimes this energy can show up in a smaller way, and I think that's what it's done here. So lastly, let's just take a quick look before I end this, I know, very long video, but let's just take a quick look at the Oracle of Echoes here in the center and how it would look with the Tarot of Abyss to either side. This is my first edition, I just realized. Hold on, let's grab the second edition since that's the point of this video, right? Just look at the new one. All right, that's a little better. So my piles are a little bit messy, but let's zoom in. Boop. There we go. Oh, I really like this pop of color in the center. I thought that was going to throw me, but actually I really, really, really like it. Oh, look at this. The 2 of Pentacles, the 2 of Swords, and then vulnerability in the center. I mean, okay, I'm really excited. Do you see my hands? I'm like, ah! I'm really excited. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. 10 of Cups and the High Priestess and Trapped. That's a really different take on the energy of these cards. When you suddenly add this oracle into it, it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much. The Moon and the 2 of Cups and transformation. Look at the dichotomy that is happening here. Ugh. Okay. The Tower and the 10 of Swords. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Look at this combination. Can you imagine? You've pulled for yourself the Tower and the Ten of Swords, but the Oracle card is Time to Soar. Like, what are you being set free from? That is really cool. Okay. We have the Spinner, and then we have the Hanged One and Awakening. So there's really an opportunity here for a shift in perspective. A shift in perspective. There's an opportunity to evolve. This is really cool. The Moon, and then we have the King of Cups and the Five of Pentacles. This is, okay, yeah, these are going to be really fun to work with together. Let me zoom back out. I think you get the idea. I'm really going to enjoy that. So I am stoked. I'm going to be playing with these decks together, obviously. I mean, why wouldn't I? I think they're stunning together. So that's really cool. And I really like the way that the color kind of contrasts with the monochromatic tones of the Terror of the Abyss. Really, really beautiful. I hope you enjoyed coming along with me for this walkthrough, this tour through the deck. I love doing this. It just depends on the deck, whether it ends up being more of a deep dive organically or whether it ends up being a little bit of a zippier journey. It just depends on what's happening. Really beautiful fan because, of course, it's gorgeous, smooth, silky cardstock. Love it. This is such a stunning deck, and I can't wait to get into it even more. Again, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this walkthrough provided some value to you. If you enjoyed it or you did find value in it, please do click the like button. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here, and of course, click the little notification bell. And if you watch primarily on a mobile device, you may need to enable notifications on your device so you actually get the notifications when I go live or I upload a new video. Thank you so, so much for hanging out with me while I went through these two stunning, stunning decks. I'm really excited to have been able to get into these with you guys and to do this process because I love it. It is, of course, part of my bonding experience. So thanks for coming along with me. I just want him here somewhere. We'll just a little peek. There we go. All right. Thanks so much, you guys. And as always, may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys.